Hello lovely people, and welcome to the second session for August on the coverlet of comfort, and continuing on with the theme this month of Ancestral Lines. I'll just show you what I've done. I've done all my background stitching all the way along. Actually, I've just noticed I haven't quite done. There's still a needle in there. I need to finish those last few stitches. I'll just do that quickly while I talk you through what I'm going to do next. I want to bring in to this piece various elements that I talked about last week. I was thinking as I was doing this background stitching what I would do. I knew I wanted to use red to kind of represent bloodlines, which is another phrase that's used, isn't it, for you know, ancestral lines. And so I've chosen various bits and bobs in red to include. I'm going to do some couching, some more stitching, some kind of embroidery, and then probably other things as well as the month goes on. I don't know exactly what I'm doing or where I'm going. I'm asked every now and then here in the comments and in the Facebook group about what's coming next, and I have to say I don't know, and I'm not being deliberately obtuse. I'm not, you know, keeping things from you. I literally don't know. This is how we're working. You know, I plan more ahead than I would normally because I have to a degree, but I don't know what we're doing next month. I've no idea what theme I'm doing, what techniques we're going to use, or even where it's going on the coverlet. Probably the opposite side to this, but that's only a probably. That might change. So yeah. You always feel free to ask me questions, but if I say I don't know, it is literally that I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So I'm just going to use this last little bit of thread up here. I don't know if I'll get to the end. It doesn't really matter if I don't. So I used all different shades of tan and cream and so on that I showed you last week. Oh, I've got the little bundle of tea-dyed threads left over to show you the difference. If you remember last week I showed you a bundle of threads that I thought was too bright for my taste and for this piece, and I dipped them in tea, so I'll show you those. Okay, I'm not quite going to make it to the end, but it doesn't matter, and it's very probable that I need another line of stitching along there, but I thought I was done. I thought I'd gone right to the edge, but there we go, doesn't matter. Just finish that off on the back. So I'll just give you a slow scan in case you want to see. I did do here and there, like I talked about last week, the little stick stitches, you know, the vertical stitches where I came up against an edge. I did it quite often actually. It kind of breaks it up a little bit, but because it's all neutrals on neutrals, it doesn't really stand out. It's just a different texture. And it's just something I like to do in the moment as I'm stitching, like I said. You know, if I come up against an edge, and here and there I've left fluffy edges just because I like them, and some of pieces I added. I think this piece I added over the top because as I was stitching I hadn't overlapped quite enough, so it began to gap, so I just put another. I chose very thin cloths to do that because of the layering. That was another added bit, and this little bit here. So that's my background piece. And I've then, let's show you those tea-dyed threads. I think it was those ones. So those were the threads that I showed you last week that I then put in tea. And now they've gone this beautiful sort of, beautiful to me, you know, it's all subjective. Beautiful, more muted tones, and like I said, I used some of them in here. So I've pulled out of my collection of bits and bobs. One element I wanted to bring in were the textile traditions that have inspired me over the years, and the two big ones that are not my own traditions, me being an English woman, obviously, are Japanese Borrow and Indian Kantha. If you've been here a while, you'll know that. So for the Indian Kantha aspect of it, I've got some sari silks that I got from the best shop in the world, which is Dillyway and Dillyway in Glastonbury, I got a bundle of sari silks when I was there, or some months ago. I did it as, I filmed it as part of Park Home Life. So I've pulled out the kind of reddish tones of that. And I've got some vintage Appleton's wool here that one of you lovely people sent me. Can't remember who, I'm sorry. I don't think I'll stitch, I don't really like to stitch with it, but you can couch it on, or I can couch it on, or maybe I'll do a running stitch and whip it at one point, a Marion stitch. I've also got a vintage anchor cotton, and I'm going for muted reds rather than bright reds, that's just my look. I've got some more, this is darning wool, I think again it came in a little package that one of you lovely people sent me. Again, it might not be nice to stitch with because it's, I think it's kind of 60s darning wool and it's got nylon in it. But you know, I can give it a go. When I say nice to stitch with, I mean for me. You know, I like the needle to run smoothly through the thread. I don't like any resistance. And if it's difficult to stitch with and it twists and knots, then I'd rather use it in another way rather than struggle with it. And then this was some silk, I think it is, that Jill sent me. I know a lot of you went to see Jill. She had her stand at the Festival of Quilts last week. She said here in the comments, were my ears burning? Apparently quite a few of you went and said hello and my name came up. No, so I think you're only saying nice things about me. And that was another one from her, some more silk that's in that. You know, these are going away from red, but they blend and they kind of got a reddish hue, but they're more earthy, so they kind of tie the two together in some way. I've got a bit of rickrack that I might tea dye. It is cream, but I might just tea dye it just to knock it back a bit more. And I've also got here, these are new, these are Ecovita from DMC. These are natural dyed DMC wool, which I got when I was still in France with some birthday money. I got a box of them. And those are okay to stitch with, so I might use those for stitching. They're obviously green, that's because I have an idea of something and I want to use some green. So that's my bits and bobs. Oh, and I also got, I treated myself, they're just sitting here so I'll show you. You know, I was complaining last week that I didn't have enough pins. Well, mentioning. So I treated myself. This is only the second box I've ever owned in my life of Clover applique pins. I haven't actually opened it yet to check that they haven't, because sometimes they change things. No, they're still nice. That's good. You know, sometimes they change the way they make things, don't they? So there's one of my originals, and that's the new one. Are they the same? Yeah, I think they're the same. So I've got some more of those. I probably won't need very many this week, but I'm down to these. I looked in all my pouches and everywhere and I could hardly find any, so I don't know where they've gone to. They have walked now and then. No, there's none in that pouch. Anyway, get on with it, Kathryn. Stop looking for applique pins. You've got enough. So my overall idea at this moment for the rest of the month, for the rest of this piece, is to do more, just keep going with the lines, the theme of lines. Now, my piece is about 40 inches long, I think. One of you asked about the length because your piece was 50 inches long, and my suggestion was to that person to, if that was too much for you to work on, to just do a narrower piece. Because, yeah, I think it would be a shame to not have it the full length. If you really think that's too long a piece, I guess you could do a shorter piece in the middle and then just put something plain at either end. That would be another possibility. But anyway, I'm going with the full length. So I think the first idea I had to get me started, again, it's that idea of taking, you know, if you have an idea, just start with that idea. I'm not going to plan the whole thing. Keep checking that I haven't moved it too far down. It's a bit challenging showing a whole great long, oh excuse me, a whole great long thing under here rather than a square thing, but here we are. Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to do is I got a piece of the sari silk, which is often quite wide, and I tore it up the middle, here it is, so that I ended up with a narrower piece. And it is just slightly too long, but you know, that's good. I want that. And I think I'm going to start pinning this on. I'm not going to go and iron it because I want it kind of rumply. I don't want to put it on long, straight and flat like that. I want it to be more organic. So I'm just going to start, I'm not going to twist it really tightly. I'm just going to start, I'll overlap the edge a tiny bit, just pinning it on, and I might just twist it here and there, and then pin it again. And here and there I quite like the idea of it being fully flat, but I'm just fiddling about, you know. Sometimes it just falls a natural way and you can just go with that. It's that we're going back to listen to the cloth. If you remember that from last year, if you were here for the stitch journal. Just seeing what it does rather than trying to force it. Sometimes, you know, not always. Sometimes we have to give it a bit of gentle persuasion. But other times the way it naturally falls looks more natural than if you really, you know, really push it into place. So let's just let that do its thing, basically. And again, I'm not worrying about the rest of it for now. I'm just putting this one line on, and whatever happens afterwards we'll work around it or over it or whatever. And I know that that's still uncomfortable for some of you. And if you want to plan it more, you know, if you want to select some stuff and lay it on and pin it down and think about it like that, then of course you do you. I'm just doing me and showing you me in action. Now it's now too short because I've wiggled it a bit too much, and I don't want to have to add a bit if I don't have to. So I'm going to just, you can't see it's off camera there, but I'm just making sure that I'll have enough to get right to the end. So just make some of these curves a bit less pronounced. If that's the word. I think that'll be all right. And that's just short of the end, but that's got a bit of the blue thread in that. They're usually all stitched together, sari silks. We'll just leave it. We just leave it into one great long thing, so then you have to separate them. There. No, I think I am going to actually just cut myself some slack, so to speak, or ease myself some slack, just so that it does go right to the end. So just go back to where there was a big bend in the river of life. Okay, so now I've just got that little bit of slack, so I can just get it to go right to the end. So it's just thinking, I guess, about an abstract way of storytelling. Now I want to stitch that on first, but just to kind of, I could invisible baste with a matching colour. I think I'm just going to do a running stitch in a matching colour, just to attach it. A matching, or as near as makes no difference, that will do. Big. I might just take one strand. I don't like that needle for one strand, I like this one. This was one of the sharp needles that Jenny sent me. I like to use the finest possible needle. That's just me. Right, so I'm just going to... Oh, someone asked about my orts. This apparently is a video about me going off on tangents, or sidebars, as Jerry would say, Jerry Bellini. My orts started years ago when I lived in England before I went to France, and I was teaching in my local art centre there. A lady I think her mum had passed away. It was a lady, she was an artist but not a textile artist, and left a big bag of embroidery flosses, and some of them were full skeins and part skeins, but there was also this tangle, and there's probably still some in there, and I've got some of it also. They were all very bright colours. Some of it I tea dyed in a tub, and when this gets low I go and grab another handful and squidge it in. So it started like that, and then Vicky who loves purple, hello Vicky, sent me a little care package some time ago, and in there was another tangle. A lot of the purples I think came from Vicky, and I work from this a lot, not exclusively but a lot, you'll have seen that. And then if I do work from full skeins of floss, and then I pull off 2 strands and I don't use the other 4 strands, for example, then I put that in there, or any little ends or anything like that. So that is the story of my thread nest, and then underneath it I keep these things that I use for basting, some black and cream and whatever. And so there we go, and it lives in that little basket. Right, get on with it, Kathryn. It's hours already and you haven't done anything. Right, so I've got my 1 strand, so I'm literally going to go up to this end and just attach it. I think I'm just going to go sort of vaguely up the middle with the running stitch. And this is just to really, attach it to the background piece. I don't need to be super finicky about the stitching, but I do want it to be quite small. Just whatever makes you happy to do, really. I'm going to leave that little bit of blue thread there because it's kind of part of the story of that piece of sari silk. And then as I go along where it's rumpling, you see I didn't pin it completely down because now I can just put some little folds in it as I go with my thumb and just stitch them down. So yeah, so storytelling with the cloth. The sari silk represents for me the Indian textile tradition that has inspired me. The red colour represents the bloodlines of ancestry. And I'm going to put some other stitching over the top, which then represents my own personal family history. And that's probably the way I'm going to work, and again I say probably to give myself room to change my mind if the cloth tells me so. That's probably how I'm going to work for the rest of the month on this piece, in different ways, whatever ways come to me. But just thinking about cultural ancestral lines, because all of us who stitch all over the world, however we do it, and however we have done it going back through history, have all taken a needle and thread and some cloth and worked in a very similar, if not the same way. So that's a connection, isn't it? Even if the end result is very different, looks very different. And there's some variations in technique. You're thinking about sashiko, for example, in Japanese textiles, the way they have a thimble in the palm of their hand and a long needle, and they load the stitches onto the needle and several at a time and pull through. There are variations, but drilling right down to the basics of these days, a metal stick with a point at one end and an eye at the other. Back in the mists of time, the needles would have been made from bone or some other material. And then the thread, which these days are very fine, but again, originally they would have been plant fibres or sinews from animals or things like that, or strips of animal hide. Just thinking about all those peoples going back from when I think the theory is that when people first started joining 2 pieces of some kind of textile together, possibly animal skins in the beginning. The needle didn't come first. What came first was an awl, something sharp to make holes, like maybe from flint or antler or bone or something sharpened, to make the holes, and then the threads, sinew, whatever, were pushed through the hole. And then at one point, and not one person, but probably certainly several people, all at the same time, had the idea of putting a hole in the needle and making the hole and drawing the thread through in one movement. And now we have these lovely, well, this is a 100-year-old needle from Jenny, who lives in the States, but the needle is a British-made needle that she had picked up over there, and she sent a packet of them, and she sent me a couple. So there's a connection. Well, there's a kind of reference to Ancestral Lines that's right there. Yeah, these lovely fine needles we have these days. You know, my favourite tulip needles, which are Japanese as well. You think of the simple needle and the act of, or the invention of being able to sew cloths together to make garments, rather than before that you'd just wrap yourself in, you know, an animal skin as it was, had such an impact on human civilization. Because if you can make garments, sort of trousers and tunics or whatever, suddenly you can move more easily. You imagine if you have to walk around wrapped in an animal skin, it'll keep falling off, and you know, you won't be warm or protected from the sun or whatever, you know, the environment in the same way. And imagine then you've got a tunic and some trousers, how liberated you suddenly will be. And it also enabled our ancestors to live in all kinds of different environments that previously we couldn't. Just because of the simple invention of the sewing needle. And here we are now with our needles and threads, and we're part of that story, part of that heritage. So I'm just stitching along. And oh, I do just want to mention Friday's video and my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful quilt that I shared with you last Friday. And Kaz is here, she's been here for a few days, she's here for a few days longer, and we've had some lovely days out together and got to know each other really well. She's got a great sense of humour, she's an absolutely lovely person, we've laughed a lot, and I think this Friday I will, because I was a bit speechless last Friday, I feel like I got to make up with some wittering. I think I will just sit and have a chat with you because Kaz will be gone. She'll still be in the UK. She's going to visit some other people before she goes back to Australia. But I do think it would be nice to just share with you some of our adventures. So I think I will just, on Friday, just sit and tell you about that. I've kind of lost track of where we are in that cycle of a slow stitch one Friday and Park Home Life the next. I think I did the nettle. Does it really matter? I think as long as there's a video on Friday, most of you are happy. But I think we are due a Park Home Life this week, so I'll do that. And the other thing is my next kind of slow stitch project with you will be the pouch from my nettle dyed cloth. And because I've been having such a lovely time with Kaz, and also I'm teaching an in-person workshop this week, which will be the first one since I came back to England. So that's exciting. That is at someone's house. It's a lady a friend of mine that I've known for quite a long time. But still, you know, it's a proper workshop. We're doing eco printing, so I'm looking forward to that. But I've got some preparation to do for that. So all that being said, I won't have time to do the pouch because that's going to take quite a lot of filming and stopping, and you know, quite a few hours of time. I need to get another bit. Okay, so I've rethreaded my needle and I'm just stitching on in the same way, just creasing and folding it here and there and just stitching it down. If I'm going through a cloth that's a little bit more resistant underneath, I'm not worrying if my needle goes right through to the back, as long as I attach the bit of sari silk down to the background. And yeah, the other thing that I'm looking forward very much to doing is putting a hanging sleeve on the back of my quilt and putting it up on my bedroom wall, and I need to go to the DIY store and get another batten, because the quilt that's hanging there already, the batten's slightly too short. I really want it to hang nicely, but rest assured, as soon as that's done I will show you. And the lovely journals that she made me to go along with the quilt, with all the envelopes and notes from you all in. Thank you so much. I can't say thank you enough. I don't think I've ever been more moved by anything in my entire life. It was just, yeah, unbelievable, absolutely overwhelming. Yeah, and the journals with all your notes and envelopes and so on. In my bedroom I have a chair, which is actually the spare dining chair that never comes out unless there's more than one guest here. And I'm going to keep the journals on that chair, so they'll be next to my bed along with the quilt above my bed. And when I woke up this morning and opened my eyes, I sleep facing the wall. I just sleep on my left side, that's just where I'm comfy. And I opened my eyes and I looked at my quilt that's hanging there now, and then it occurred to me that once I get my quilt hanging there, that's this beautiful community created for me, and Kaz put together. Every time when I open my eyes in the morning, it'll be the first thing I see, and when I close my eyes at night, it'll be the last thing I see. So I really will feel. So I've got a thread hair trapped in there. You'll all be watching over me. Well, it's just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Yes, now I'm going to do some embroidery. Now, looking back through the months, thinking back to Joyful Place, which was, I have to look, I think it was March, the cloth weaving, and my Joyful Places were the woods and the beach. On that I did some feather stitching with some little roses to represent my Northern English heritage, and I'm going to do a version of that on here. So that is obviously ties in with the theme of Ancestral Lines, and also it echoes some stitching that I've done previously on the coverlet of Comfort. So I'll just give you a slow scan so you can see how that looks. I think you can kind of imagine from just seeing part of it. So I was thinking of doing that with green, because I think I was thinking literally of roses with green stems, but now I've been looking at those while I've been stitching this. I don't think I'm going to use the green. I think I'm going to do a more brownish colour. Where have I put my orts? Maybe a more brownish green. Which might not be out of the orts. I think I do want it to be all the same colour, only because that way it will be more. Stella's snoring, I don't know if you can hear her. That way it will be more background. I think if I keep changing colour it will stand out more, if that makes sense. So I think I'm going to go into my tin, and one of my tins. Have I got anything in here? That's silk dyed with pine cones, but I don't think it's a bit thick. Talk amongst yourselves while I find myself some thread. I wonder if that's enough. That was a kind of pinky brown. I have another tip. This has got some full skeins in. That again, that's 8-weight pearl cotton. That might also be too thick. I've decided to go with this Valdani pearl cotton. It's a little bit thick, but it's the right colour. So I'm going to need a slightly bigger needle. Number 8 tulip. Stella's a bit tired because we had a day on the beach yesterday, which I'll tell you more about on Friday. So she had a great time. Right, Lazy Girl thread. Langes Fädchen, Faules Mädchen. I may have mispronounced it, but that's the German expression meaning long thread, lazy girl. Right, so we'll start with a knot. And I'm going to do feather stitch all along following my red sari silk. It's the most sensible way to hold it so that you can see and I can see. Make sure I'm in the middle, but not necessarily staying on it. I'm going to crisscross it, I think. So I'm just going to start here somewhere. So I'll zoom you in case you weren't here for feather stitch or you need a reminder. I hope you can see it's tone on tone. So I've come up. You want to visualize a little triangle on the cloth. So you're going to go in along from where you came out, maybe 1/4 of an inch or so away, and then come out with your needle on the 3rd point of that triangle. And you can make it as long or as short as you like. Obviously, if you make it too long, you'll get great long stitches that might catch if your quilt's going to be used, so just bear that in mind. And as you come up, you want to make sure that your thread is under your needle so that you trap it down. Here comes the Lazy Girl thread, and so you get this little V shape trapped by the thread, and then you can go over in the same direction again, or you can go back the other way. I generally don't like to go over more than twice in the same direction, just because you get this line here, which I don't find very pleasing. So I generally go once or twice one way, and then to turn back the other way, shouldn't have got such a long thread, you just go across again. And I'm going to just catch the edge of my sari silk down and come up. I'm holding it super awkwardly, but I hope you can see. And then same thing again, just make sure that your thread is not round your hand and your rings and the edge of your cloth, but under the needle, so that when you pull through, you trapped it down. I think I'm going to go once more that way. And then back the other way. And once more again. And now the stitches that I did in the background, I'm completely ignoring. I'm just stitching over them. Like I said before, they're just texture. So I'm going to go ahead and do this all the way down. Just turn it round that way. I think it's handier if I just go and do that on my own. I think you probably know how to do it if you've been here all along. Hopefully you could see well enough there. Now I haven't caught my loop, do you see? So I just have to go under there with that. So I'm going to go and sit and do all that. And then once I've gone the whole length, and I'm going to go either 1 or 2 to one side and then 1 or 2 to the other side, and just weave it, well you'll see when I come back when I've done it, just weave it back and forth over the piece of sari silk, and then I'll be back to show you what I'm going to do next, okay? Okay, so I've done that all the way along. So here and there I just strayed off the edge, but I just tried to keep it curving with my 1 or 2 stitches one way and 1 or 2 stitches the other. So back in March I then stitched little stalks and straight stitches for leaves off the end of every little tail pointy bit. I'm not going to do that now. This is going to be sort of even more abstract. That was trying to replicate climbing roses. And the other thing I did back in March was, because my family is from Yorkshire, but I was born in Lancashire, because of the white rose of York and the red rose of Lancaster, I used a strand of red and a strand of white and made a French knot rose on every stalk, if you weren't here or you don't remember. And again, I'm not going to do that. I am going to do the red and white. My white is this silk dyed with pine cones by my lovely friend Fabienne, and gifted to me some time ago. So it's not true white, it's more off-white, because I don't want it really jumping out at me. So again, it's representative. And then for the red, I've gone for some little red glass beads. So I'm going to do the French knots first. They're both inclined to catch your thread around. I think beads are more likely to. I'm going to do more stitching. I'm going to trap my thread around my beads, but anyway, in future weeks. So I'm going to start with doing French knots. I'll just do a couple in case you don't know or you need a reminder. This is quite thick thread, so I'm going to go for my bigger needle again. And I'm just going to try and do them randomly. I say try because random is the hardest thing to do. So, you know, I'm not going to do one red, one bead, one French knot like that. I'm just going to, yeah, you know what random means. So I'm just going to do occasional French knots. Now I'm not going to get a long lazy girl thread of this, not too long, because I do seem to remember that it doesn't like it. It gets a bit twisty, especially when you're doing French knots. Just make a knot in the end. I didn't make a knot in the end, it pulled right off. I'm mumbling, sorry Amy. Amy, I think was it you, Amy? Said a while ago. Maybe it wasn't Amy. I don't know. That when I was asking about the sound, because a couple of people had sound issues, one of you said, oh, that's fine, every now and then we can't hear you because you put your head down and you talk softly, and that whether it was you, Amy, or somebody else always says, come on Kathryn, speak up, you're mumbling. So I try not to mumble. I tried to speak up. So I've come through from the back. I get hold of my thread where it's coming out of the cloth. I'm right at the tip of one of my little stalks on my feather stitch. Because the thread's quite thick, I think I'm just going to do 2 wraps. You can always audition, so you can go 1, 2 round your needle and then just lay it on the needle still and just visualize how big your knot's going to be. I hope you can see. I will zoom you in. I think actually that is quite small, so I'm going to do 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, I'm just going to put the point of my needle where I will go through if I'm happy, and just tighten the knot up, and you can just get an idea of how big your knot is. It's virtually impossible to pull a French knot out successfully. So that's why I always audition if I'm not, you know, absolutely certain of the thread and thickness. So let's go for 3. So you go 1, 2, 3 times around your needle. Put the point, you can go back in just next to where you came out. And then once I've got the needle safely through the cloth, then I snug this up, not super tight, but snug. Put my thumb on it. And then pull through slowly and gently, giving the thread a chance to run through so it doesn't tangle. And then you can let go with your thumb at the last minute. And there's my first French knot. So I might do another one up here. And then those ones that are left will be beads. So I'll go ahead and do my 3 wrap French knots as random as I can manage until this bit of thread runs out, and then I'll come back and do the beads with you. I'm sure you know how to sew beads on, but you know, just for what do you call it, completeness. See, I pulled a bit violently there and it wanted to snag. Luckily I got away with it. The trick is really to not have a great long thread, not have too much of it double, so most of it is single. You see what I mean, where it goes through your needle, and then just pull gently. Don't get carried away and, you know, do a great yank all in one go. And because I'm going to jump around quite a lot, I think I am going to, on the back, just take a little bit of the backing cloth under my needle, just so I don't have great big, you know, threads on the back. if you're not worried about that, if you think you're going to keep it hung on a wall or you're going to back it in some way, then you don't need to worry. And I probably will stop worrying because it's a pain to do. I'll probably just jump around and not care. So yeah, so I'm just going to go on and do some French knots all the way along until my thread runs out, and then I'll be back for the beads, okay? And to talk about next time. Okay, I did my French knots till my bit of thread ran out. Got me that far. I did indeed stop threading through on the back, so I've got big loops, but I don't mind. It was just, yeah, I didn't like to keep turning over and threading the needle through it. It interrupted my flow. So I've got one strand of that dark red that I used to tack the sari silk down with. I'm going to use that to put my beads on, and basically I'm just going to put a bead everywhere where I didn't put a French knot. I don't think I'm going to put one right on that end because of joining. I think I'm going to leave those two, in fact. I can always go back later and add one if it's showing, you know, after I've joined, but I wouldn't want to risk a bead in the seam. That would not be ideal. So I'm just coming through at the tip of that one. And yeah, I just wanted to say, although there's a knot, this isn't what I wanted to say, but I'm going to say this as well. I'm still going to do a little back stitch on the spot, because I'm not confident of a knot of a single strand pulling through. So I just get a bead on my needle, pick a bead, any bead, and then I'm going to do 2 stitches through it. I just like to do 2. Some people use that invisible thread. I don't. I have tried it in the past, back in the day when I bought new stuff, and I just found it a real pain to work with. It twists and tangles, and plus it's polyester, so I don't like to buy it new. I'd much prefer to use a toning thread, you know. So there's my one little rose. I don't think it's a bad idea to then take another back stitch on the back. It is a bit of a pain, but then if anything happens to one bead, it doesn't take all the rest of it with it, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to jump across to the next one, do another back stitch. I can actually do it on the front because it doesn't show. Save turning over. Pick up another bead. Did I go twice through that other one after I said I would? I think I did. Can't remember now. You know, I just wanted to say that, you know, you might not all be from Yorkshire families born in Lancashire. In fact, I'm certain that you're not. So I just wanted to make some suggestions. If you wanted to do the feather stitch and the little rosebuds or flowers, you could maybe think about, I know in the States, for example, you have state flowers, don't you? Each state has its own flower. So maybe your state where you live, or the state of your ancestors or something like that. Or maybe there's a national flower of your country, or the country of your ancestors. Or maybe just your favourite flower. You could just think about, you know, your favourite flower or a loved one's favourite flower, and represent that. Or maybe you don't want to do flowers at all, and you can think of some other kind of stitching you can do that speaks to you and your history, or the history that you resonate with, or that resonates with you. Yeah, I just wanted to come up with some suggestions for those of you who are not from Yorkshire stock, born over the Pennines in Lancashire. When I talk about it, I go all northern. I've got a knot on the back, and I didn't do the back stitch, did I? That's because I'm talking. Anyway. And I can't remember how many times I went through, so I'll go through again for good measure. I don't think I did the back stitch on the back up there. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and do these French knots and beads, and that really for this week is all I'm doing. But just for those of you who like to race ahead, because I know there are some of you out there, I'm going to carry on through the month. I'll just park my needle, doing couching, stitching of all different kinds, but following this theme of using something reddish or red, and I might even overlap, even if I cover up some of my former stitching in future weeks. So if you don't want to wait for me, if you want to just race ahead and do your own thing, then you go for it. But yeah, that's basically what I'm planning. Like I keep saying, it might change, but this is kind of my theme, these red lines running through my piece. So next week I shall do something else, and the week after I shall do something else. So if you want to wait for that, you feel free to wait for that. If you want to go on ahead, feel free to go on ahead. It's all good here. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have fun stitching on your own, technically a stitch meditation scroll, although we're not going to scroll it up unless you are. Of course you could do that. You could absolutely make this as a stitch meditation scroll. That was partly the idea for those of you not making a coverlet. Where was I in my goodbye before I thought of something else to say? Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Lots and lots of love and kisses to you all, each and every one of you. Happy stitching. Bye bye.